This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to A Sharp Outlook on K4HD Radio and Talk or TV. I am Angela Sharp, your host. Our armchair discussions with industry experts will give you the steps, tools, and information to be successful in business and to prepare you to be your best self. Hello, I'm Angela Sharp, and thank you so much for joining us today here on A Sharp Outlook. And I'm thankful that you are here to be able to join us for this program, because it's going to be a very important topic for those that have children, know of children, and care that children are safe these days. And so I was looking and I saw this thing called online playgrounds, and they were games, and they're fun, and you meet friends, but there's also some red flags that we need to be aware of. And online games for kids, they can be safe, but safety depends a lot on which games they use and how closely adults supervise those games. How the kid games are taking place is what's really important. Dear God. My computer happened to just start running something. I apologize. Online games for kids can be safe, but safety depends on which games they use and how closely adults supervise them. How kids' games sites are usually made safer is because they have no open chat with strangers, don't allow kids to share personal information such as their name, address, school, and use moderation and filters if they have comments or usernames. They often have no public friend systems or private messaging, so these kids' sites are usually pretty safe for them, and there's no chance of potential adults or others that don't have the right ideas about how to be in that space. Games with open chats, such as text and voice, games with friend list, private messages, or, clans or guilds or things like that, platforms where kids and adults can mix. Those are ones where the multiplayer games are not just for kids' sites. You have to watch out for the warning signs. Anyone asking for age, school, city, photos, or videos, or someone wanting the kids to have use another app such as WhatsApp, Discord, or Snapchat can be dangerous. There are requests to keep things secret. I think there's a problem when someone is asking your child to keep secrets from their parents. They're offering gifts. They're giving game money or special status in exchange for pictures or favors. There should be an immediate stop, and then the child tell an adult. And what is most disturbing is the coercion to meet and not tell anyone, the influence they might have over your children. The dangers can be real. And what could the psychological effect be on their minds, their emotions, their attitudes when all of this is going on. A lot of things are happening while they're supposed to be in the playground space having fun. Well, today we have some experts to talk to us about these issues and the red flags, and also the psychological effect that it might have on your children. And so I want you to dig in. I want you to be attentive. I want you to share this information so that we can keep our children safe. Today I have Dr. Catherine Nibbs and Farida Shahid joining us to talk about this very issue. So I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Please. Good to see.
Do you want me to jump in? There was a slight delay then, as is always the way with tech.
Yes. I would like you to introduce yourselves
Yeah.
and give us some information as to why this topic is important to you.
Oh, okay. So, as you've introduced me, I am recently graduated Dr. Catherine Nibbs. I am the CEO of a company called Children and Tech. I am a consultant, child and adult trauma psychotherapist. So I've been working as a trauma psychotherapist for about 16 years, mainly working with online harm and cyber trauma impacts. And I'll probably explain later what cyber trauma is.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also a mum. I've raised children, and I have a background in and around technology from, over 30 years. So I know the domain, I know the space. And the reason this topic is important to me is because for over 15 years, I have been working with children who have been victims of what we call grooming, sextortion. They have been cyberbullied, amongst some of the harms that actually occur. And what you've talked to there, Angela, really lovely, is around the way we need to think about this space in terms of helping parents protect children, but also giving them tools to protect themselves.
Yes, absolutely. It's kind of alarming that all of this is going on just from using the computer.
Yeah.
What do you, Farida, how is it that you are impacted or that you are involved in this topic?
So my name is Farida Shahid. I have a background in cybersecurity awareness and threat intelligence as my professional background. I'm an award-winning Forbes 30 Under 30 internet safety expert. And then my personal background is that I grew up in the digital age, and Dr. Kath needed to be my psychologist, to be honest, my psychotherapist, genuinely, because I experienced the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful of the online space. And I experienced grooming and predatory behavior and great online friends and terrible online friends while I was gaming online, while I was on social media, growing up as a kid in the digital age. And so that's the heart, or I would say that's the soul. The soul behind it is my personal story, and the heart is the professional story.
Yeah, like I said, I know there are people like me that are just very surprised that these kinds of things are going on in social media. I use it for business on a regular basis. So, I'm not going to be in a space where these kinds of things are happening. And, but when I'm thinking about online games for children, first off, why are the games so appealing?
You've got a $30 billion industry to thank for that there, Angela. And by 2030, the gaming industry is suggested to be worth £30 billion. So, if we just put that figure there, the gaming industry has been around for a long, 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 long time.
Mm-hmm.
This goes way back to those arcade games. And before we were on air, you were talking about your children used to go down to the arcade games. Games are an inherent part of the human psyche. And what we've been able to do with technology is create environments and spaces where you can engage in those fun activities in the form of something that might gain you mastery, success, fun, play, cognitive awareness, education, and almost every type of learning that we engage in from the age of about 0 through to 99 is enhanced and encouraged, and we do much better at learning through play. And if you think about gaming, that's what gaming mostly is.
I
Well,
would agree. Yeah.
now that you put the dollar sign on it, yeah, I can see why there is a major issue when organizations, companies are making that kind of money. They're going to continue to do whatever they can to even increase that amount of money that's coming in, and they're going to protect their product. But they have to be aware of the dangers also. You know, what's being done about that? I mean, do the companies like, okay, I'm just going to ask you, do you not care? Or what's going on that, you know, some of our children are being harmed, like Farida said, and they haven't put protocols in to prevent that from happening. You know, what's going on there? Why?
I'm gonna let Dr. Kath take that.
Well, actually, I'm going to say one of the things about my approach, Angela, is I am in England we call it a middle lane hog driver. Okay, I like to look at the positives and the negatives of everything, and my background is working in and around gaming industry services. So, you know, one of the things I didn't say earlier, by the way, is that I've written 7 books, but what I spend most of my time doing is talking to parents, to professionals. Certainly I will talk about this online. The thing about the gaming space is when it was invented, we didn't have the online interactions that we do now in let's say 2026. However, when the games went live and became something where people from around the world could interact with each other, we had, and this is going back early, let's say late 90s, early 2000s, we actually did have rules, and those rules were often known as netiquette and social norms, and many people knew how to engage in a gaming environment with other players respectfully, or if they didn't, then, you know, pretty much like somebody who was misbehaving in a meeting at work, you might be asked to leave. And then came the introduction of home computers, home consoles, handheld items. And what that meant was the prevalence of children appearing in those spaces has increased beyond the ability of the systems to be able to put the protective measures in place. We should have done this at the outset, and we didn't. And we are now trying to backtrack. We're trying to put fences around dangerous areas in the city park, so to speak. We're trying to fence off the ponds and the dangerous equipment, and children being children are circumventing those gates and fences and age assurances and lots of other things that are being put into place. And sadly, because children arrived in these areas, it meant it was much easier for adults to also be in those child-based areas as well, without being detected in the way that you would in a real city park, for example.
Wow. Well, then, you know, I mean, how do predators, you know, typically approach children in those spaces? I mean, what does that look or sound like?
Friendship.
Connection. Yeah, there are academic models to show what we call the grooming process. And certainly over the last 28 years, they have changed. I mean, Farida is absolutely spot on. Friendship forms one of the biggest allies to being able to groom a child. But where many years ago, the perpetrator would have to create a relationship in order to groom a child, we live in a society now where, I think I'm going to use a metaphor that's going to feel a little bit There are so many fish that a fisherman can cast many lines at once, and it doesn't really matter which fish bites and takes the hook.
Yeah, and that's quite a visual. And I'm sorry, it's a kind of a gagging visual when you're thinking about,
Yeah.
predators out there in a child's space, and it's like it doesn't matter the child, it doesn't matter how many. If I don't catch one, I'll catch another.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So they're approaching them in these games and things like that. What are some of the warning signs that a conversation, has gone awry? It's not safe anymore. What are some of the things that
I'll let Farida speak from her personal experience, because I think there's something to be learned from certainly people who have gone through this, and then I can kind of just come in with a slight academic lens, if you like.
Yes, absolutely. Frida, please.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, I first went to the parents' perspective in terms of the red flags. I always say your gut feeling that something's wrong. Like, always believe your gut feeling as a parent. And if your gut feeling is saying something's wrong, then most likely something is. And sometimes it's anxiety or whatever, but anxiety is telling you something. So you have to pay attention to it either one way or another. But I would say from the child perspective, or seeing the child as them pulling away from the things that they typically enjoy in their offline life, and not wanting to engage in that, or not able to find a sense of connection offline, where their only connection is online, and it's like in a way that feels not natural to how they usually are. They're very there might be like emotional about something that's going on online, and they don't want to open up about it, and they don't want to talk to you. That's one. Two is that sometimes it just looks like, in the beginning, it depends on how deep the grooming is. Sometimes it just looks like they formed a romantic connection online, and they have not yet felt fully the red flags of it, because your brain is still developing, so you don't understand what you're seeing. And especially if you come from a home where there are certain red flags, and we all have that in one way or another, in different severities, that red flags aren't really red flags. They're like yellow flags, maybe pink flags, right? You're observing your behavior of your parents, and it's normal for somebody to be upset with you about something that may have nothing to do with you. So if the person you're talking to online is doing that, then why would you think that's a red flag? If your no is never respected in the household, why would it be such a big deal that someone that you're supposed to be in a relationship or friendship with is not, understanding your no? So I believe it's very nuanced. I would love to hear Dr. Kath's perspective on this, but I would say it's just the gut feeling, them not enjoying the things they usually enjoy to a degree that makes you feel as though something's happening, them hiding their interactions, where like you come into the room and they're like, they close out a screen, they stop the message, like an irritation there that you're present. It doesn't always mean it's grooming. It just might mean that they feel there's a part of their online life that they can't share with you. And that does open the door to grooming and things happening without you knowing. So it's just important to lean into that versus ignoring it, or leading in with curiosity versus blame, I would say.
So if a parent, like you said, the child is closing their screen, if they were just casually asking, "Hey, did you meet a new friend? Tell me about your new friend." Would that be invasive? Would the child consider it invasive that you're asking questions? Because I mean, I know me as a mother, I won't be like, "So who's your new friend? Tell me all about it. What have you guys been talking about? I want to know. I just want to know."
It depends. I think it depends. They're also probably scanning your past interactions and reactions to them when they told you things, and they're determining from that whether or not they want to open up to you. Because the first thing is, okay, if I say this, she's all happy now, but the moment I say, "Oh, I met this," the conversation of don't talk to strangers. Why are you talking to them? How are you connecting? Were you friends? Why are you spending so much time online? So I think they're scanning their past reactions to decide whether or not they're going to say anything.
So they begin to become very secretive, but they're not understanding. The children aren't understanding the potential dangers that are there.
They might, but they're curious. It depends on what stage they are in their development and their feelings and all of that. But I believe a lot of kids, one, they don't know it's dangerous. Two, they might know it's dangerous, but you're maybe a preteen or a teen and you want to do things outside of the box. You want to, Or, I mean, a lot of things are inherently dangerous that we have normalized, which is like things that are very normal to humans, like relationships, friendships. That is inherently dangerous when you don't know who that person is, but we all take chances. And so the online world, more people than ever are meeting their spouses, their friends, their careers, their businesses in an online space. So why wouldn't a 12-year-old think that they could meet their best friend on Roblox?
Well, you got a point there because, you know, you hear about them being online and children being bullied, you know, to the point where they're taking some pretty drastic actions, you know, harming themselves and things like that, just because someone said something online. Is there an emotional part that is really driving this, or is it something else? Yeah, Kat.
Yep. I'm going to come in on two aspects of what you were asking about here, Angela. Right. So I love the fact, Farida, that you've named the other colours of the red flags. I would certainly say we have an attitude in the world of kind of trying to understand why things happened and what we should have noticed along the way. And I'm going to give you an example that a lot of adults, when they've been in a particularly distasteful work relationship, romantic relationship, they will often, certainly in my clinic, they will often go back and say, where was the flag that I should have noticed this person wasn't who they said they were, or I had expectations that they were this person who didn't do these things. Now, right now, this is happening across the world because there's information being shared online about the Epstein files. And that's really where people are at the moment. Oh, well, we should have known, we should have recognized there were red flags. Well, when it comes to children and their behaviors online, I'm going to give you a little bit of an academic explanation and try and keep it simple. There's a theory that came out in 2004 that says because we can't see people, because we can't see how they're reacting, we can make choices online. And that's known as the disinhibition effect. Actually, I'm going to take you back to something a lot more biological, inherent and wired. And that is our ability to gauge whether somebody is safe or unsafe, whether we can trust them or not. Now, because we are all talking on the screen at this point in time, we're going to have to gauge whether we're trustworthy or not based on facial cues, what we're talking like, the cadence of our speech, what we know about each other. And if we think about what we've done, realistically, all three of us have met online, having known nothing about each other, and we all opened our videos up and we all began talking. Right. So we do it as the adults, and then we expect children to override gut intuition, override things that we've told them because they see us modeling completely different behavior. So children are in a world at this point in time where they're really confused. We say to them, if something gives you, and I use the phrase, uh-oh, if you get a feeling of, uh-oh, come and tell me. And what I generally help parents do is what I call check in, not check on. So I'm going to change the language that you used earlier, Angela, not because it's a critique of you, but because if we think about in the United Kingdom at the moment, we've got a drive to start asking children. If you ask children something, they quite quickly close down based on exactly what Farida was saying, because children will say, my shame detector says if I say this, or if I tell my parents, my carers, my teacher, whoever, about this particular thing, they might laugh, they might ridicule me, they might tell me it's nonsense, they might stop me from doing it. So I'm going to think in the best way that I can to give them an answer that satisfies them, that means I can also carry on with the behavior. And the thing about people who groom children, they know how to work around, let's put it in air quotes, those red flags. So sometimes children don't pick up that they are having conversations with somebody that are inappropriate, out of their age development stage, etc., etc. And so what I get parents to do is to talk to their children, and generally make the talk not about the internet and the online space, but about friendships and relationships and people you know and people you trust. Because what comes out time after time after time with the children and the parents that I work with is when you don't make it about the internet and you make it about the process, so not the content, the process that's taking place, what you'll find is children talk to you about, oh yeah, I could recognize somebody online that was a fibber, a scammer, a hacker, so on. And I will say, well, how do you do that then? And what generally comes out is children will say, well, they'll have a gamer tag that's different, or they might say this to me, or they might say that to me. And I say, oh, that's really interesting. Do you know, we might call those red flags. And then you can have a conversation about trust, mistrust, genuine, authentic people online, because, you know, some of the people that these children are talking to are not a risk, are not a threat. And what we're doing at the moment is, because sadly there is, again, I'm not going to go into naming and shaming, but there is something taking place at the moment that's making parents feel very, very, very frightened about the internet, because there is a movement taking place that tells you it is a very, 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 very scary environment. And parents are now finding themselves reacting to the red flags of the narrative that's taking place at the moment. So how can we educate our children about what's safe and not safe when we're being told everything is unsafe?
Right. And that makes kids more unsafe, because they don't trust that the conversation they're going to have is going to be non-shameful, non-judgmental. If all the news that you're getting is bad news and there's no understanding of just the internet is a reflection of life and people, there's good, bad, ugly, and beautiful, there's a spectrum of it, then when you're going into the conversation with your kid thinking, okay, I'm protecting my child from the biggest, baddest online groomer, and your kid is like, wow, I just met my favorite friend in the world. And it might be actually another kid on the other end of the screen, but maybe their fifth friend online in their friends list is a groomer and they haven't talked to them yet, or they're beginning to talk to them. If let's say they have 10 friends and 9 of them are totally fine, and maybe one is questionable and one is definitely the groomer, it's really hard to get to the groomer when your kid is thinking about the 9 other people or the 8 other people. And they're going to shut down if you keep talking about the groomer, because I know in my head as a kid, which is what shut me down for all conversation, is that when adults came to me to tell me about red flags of groomers, or don't talk to strangers, or this person is a bad person, this is a bad, they didn't say bad actor. In cybersecurity, would say bad actor, but they would say this is a bad person. I would think, wow, am I a bad person for liking to talk to this person? Like, that's my immediate thought as a kid. It's like, if this person is bad, but I enjoy talking to them, does that mean that I'm bad? And if you have this much hatred for this bad person, but I like talking to them, would you hate me if you knew how much I like talking to them? That's like in my head as a kid. So I have such a big issue with these conversations, is because it really feeds into the grooming process, because the groomers on the back end, and I would love Dr. Kath to weigh in on this, they go, oh, okay, we see how much your parents hate these people. You know, you're one of those people. You know, you like talking to me. You know this. So, you know, you can't tell your parents about this, because they're going to react to you the same way they're reacting to these other people. And they're not going to love you, and they're not going to be your parents. And you're not going to be able to play this game anymore. They're going to take it away from you. You're not going to go to the school that you want. You're not going to have the friends that you want, the life that you want. They don't want that for you. You want to become this, and they want you to be that. And I accept you fully as you are. And I don't want to push you into do anything you don't want to do. And so I'm just so happy we're able to have these conversations. That's what groomers do. And they're much more effective now because of all these crazy conversations we're having.
Wow. This is very informative. You know, I remember when I had my children, I grew up during a time where, you know, your parents were good parents and you had conversations, but there were certain topics that we never could talk about. They were secrets that only adults could have. And so we just never learned anything. And because of that, mistakes were made. But I made sure, or I said within my heart, I'm going to always have open conversations, and I'm not going to be judgmental, and I'm not going to, be negative about what they say. I'm just going to listen and watch. And so I tried to, do that during their time as growing up, so that, they could just talk about anything. Some of the things were disturbing to me, but I was thinking like you, Frida. I was thinking, if I say something, they're going to shut down and I'm not going to be able to talk to them anymore. And so I was very cautious and careful that, I didn't bring any finger pointing or any of that stuff. And I tried to, protect, what they saw in conversations. But conversations back then, we're talking about over 50 years ago, are not the same conversations we are having now, just because of the revolution of the internet and, technology and different things like that.
Yeah,
Which it has its good parts. It really does.
yeah. The biggest issue, Angela, is parents haven't been equipped.
Right.
And that's been the big failing. Now, I do tend to talk in metaphors and stories because it's generally an easier way for parents to understand this. But when you go into a shopping mall, I'm aware that you're in the US, so I'm going to use your terminology. When you go into a shopping mall, when you go into a city park, when you take your children to sports clubs, you do a risk assess. You kind of do a risk assessment as a parent. You say, okay, who's looking after my child? Who's here? What kind of dangers are there? And what we didn't do is we didn't equip parents with the knowledge about this digital city park and the digital shopping malls, which is how I talk about online games. And what we said is, well, we'll talk about hours of time that children can spend there. And because sadly, this is where parents were misled, misinformed, and it's not because these organizations were misrepresenting the knowledge, they just didn't know.
No.
So we had the American Psychological Association suggest that an hour of screen time for children was appropriate, and for this age it was this amount of time. And we all became focused on the metric of the screen, the device, the thing. Okay. And what I'm suggesting is the failure came when we didn't talk about the medium. We didn't talk about this portal to other people. And actually, that's the risk assessment that we didn't know how to do. We didn't get educated on it. And right now, yet again, we've become focused on the time and the metrics that are unhelpful for parents. Like I said, in the UK, we've got the campaign Just Ask. And I keep saying to people, ask what? If you don't give the parents the tools to be able to have a conversation, they can't have a conversation. And if you don't give them both sides of the coin and you don't explain what these dangers are, then you can't explain what the benefits are. And what we're doing at the moment is we've focused on only the dangers. It's now become something that people are extremely, and I'm going to use the word terrified here, extremely terrified of, because what we keep doing is focusing on the metric of when things have gone wrong. And we do that by the mainstream media news. And I'm just going to give you a figure of, I think it goes all the way back to when I first started doing around, so this will be around 2012. It was around 4% of children were going to meet their online perpetrator. It is quite a small amount. If I give you the figures of ADHD and autism representations in the general population, it's around 4 to 5%. But if you look on social media, you would think, in air quotes, everybody has, and everybody is, and everyone and every type of social media is dangerous. And I'm seeing grandiosity at a level that isn't helpful. It isn't supporting parents. It doesn't give them the guidelines. And what we're trying to do is effectively knock down the shopping centres and stop children going into the city parks. And we're saying, there we are, we've got it sorted now. But there's roads, there's other environments that children can go to. There's standalone shops, there's forests, there's swamps. That we haven't considered all of that. And the thing that we cannot do is keep barricading all of these environments.
Yeah. You have to open up and help them have understanding. We have to trust our children that they're able to understand the conversation, and then they'll make choices. But at least if we explain that to them, will that help? I mean, just not this, wanting to point fingers, wanting to put judgment, all of the nasty words that you can say and this, that, and the other about it, but just say there are circumstances where there could be someone, not all of your friends, but maybe just one person might
Yeah.
join your group that doesn't really fit the kind of friends that you like. And so, can we talk about what that friend might do or what they're kind of going to be like and things like that? Not saying that I trust your judgment. I trust, your
Well, it's
thoughts and
collective.
things
It's
like that.
collective judgment. If you actually listen to children when they're in a friendship group, the friends generally work out. I mean, this is group dynamics at its best. Generally, the children will work out who the leader is, who the person is, what we call laissez-faire and doesn't actually pull their weight. And most of the children have an opinion on other children because they're conversing between themselves. What we're doing at the moment is we're making children really insular, and that's going to prevent the conversation. So my e-safety, online safety advice is always conversations, conversations, conversations. It's not put the parental controls on here, stop them doing this, stop them doing that. It's you have conversations, they have conversations, and their friends have conversations. And in a gaming environment, people very quickly settle into social norms. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to do the swear version, but children in my office are very quick in many cases to say, that's what we call a randomer, a person you don't know. And they will just close the conversation down, block them, mute them, report them, not engage with them. The children who are vulnerable are children who are not getting their needs met by those conversations and connections in the real world. And that is the failure of the last 30 to 35 years. Is sadly, we've moved into a time where, the cost of living across the world has gone up. Parents are stressed. There's been all sorts of money issues. We've got political divide. We've got less community or less communitas taking place. And we've got more insular spaces, reducing and removing those conversations, the conversations that used to keep us safe in the real world, never mind about online.
Right.
Because it translates. I mean, in your offline life and your online life, it's like there's a through line with it. And so I believe if parents were to open up to their kids and we had these discussions on a wider scale instead of telling parents think about screen time. I remember when I first heard that as a kid, I was like, okay, that's not gonna like when it comes to grooming and it comes to protecting kids from predators. I mean, a predator behavior can happen within 30 minutes. It doesn't need 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. I understand we're talking about their development, but when it comes to the grooming side and the predator side and protecting them online, it's more about the media. But yeah, if parents were to open up more, be vulnerable about their own life experiences and let their guard down and let their mask off in conversations with kids, or mostly like preteens and teens, the better I believe the conversations will go. I think sometimes the conversations feel accusatory because you feel as a kid that, oh, they're Miss Perfect, they're Mr. Perfect, and they're the adults, and they think that I don't know anything, and so they're here to come down with their wise wisdom. And so as a kid, you're like, okay, please, I just want to go back to playing my game, or I want to go back to being on social media. But when you open up some of the conversations without any agenda of them having to share as well, just sharing just for the sake of sharing, even if they roll their eyes, even if they're like, okay, mom, whatever, who cares, just saying that actually goes into their psyche and they will remember it. Even if they don't want to admit it, they're going to remember that you said, oh, I remember I had a boyfriend in high school that said this and did this, or I remember someone said this to me. I had a girlfriend that was really mean to me. I remember someone who made me feel uncomfortable. I remember someone in my family that I didn't. And if this is of course, you want to talk from your, not necessarily your wounds, but from your scars. We know that, like that analogy. But as much as possible, if you can be vulnerable. If I remember liking someone and this is how I determined whether or not I want to be with them, or I made this mistake, just being human and opening up and just making that normal part of conversation instead of expecting them to open up to you and you haven't opened up to them. Because what person, who, one of us, why would we want to open up to somebody unless they're our therapist that they haven't opened up to us? So you're not going to tell your parents your deepest and darkest secrets if you don't feel as though you're talking to a human.
Yeah. And the thing is, I hear what you're saying as being a parent. I ran into a situation where everyone, because, I've had a very successful career, I've done and accomplished a lot of things. I've had a bunch of material things, and I have children that had the assumption that I was perfect. I had to let them know, no, I wasn't perfect. I've been through a journey. I felt kind of uncomfortable because they're two boys, um, sharing that face to face. So I wrote a book and I sent them a copy of it. I said, I'm not all that. You need to understand my pitfalls. You need to know my mistakes. You need to know my issues and the traumas and the healing that I had to go through. And so things are so much better now, but I have grandchildren who think, oh, she's perfect. And I haven't been able to express, what I've been through, what I've gone through, trusting the wrong people. You know, it might be cyber security now and in the internet, but these kind of dangers were still around even before social media came out. And I remember growing up as a child, we had neighbors. The neighbors were like watchdogs. They knew the people, other people in the neighborhood, and they would, I mean, you'd be walking back home and you would see them standing out on the sidewalk, with their arms crossed or whatever. I saw you were at so and so, and they were kind of like helpers
Mm-hmm.
of my parents, to rear us. And so we had very engaged neighbors that were always protecting us. So we didn't feel policed. We kind of felt like, wow, I have all these guardian angels around. That's the way I saw it. But I think opening up to our children and letting them know we're humans. We've made mistakes. We've even made some really bad decisions. And so, and this is what I learned from it. Let's talk about maybe some things that you would like to share with me. It is like you said, it's a two-way conversation.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be about the online work. I'm going to give you some examples here, Angela. And Farida, you are more than welcome to take these and use these with parents. But some of the things that I use with parents are, how do you know a fruit is a fruit? So I would say to my children in the supermarket, and we might be looking, I'll say, but how do you know it's a tomato? Well, because it says it's a tomato. Okay, what are the tests that you do in your head to know that that's a tomato? Because here's the thing about the online world, it might say it's a tomato, but really it's a banana. Okay. We live in a world where and especially now with AI, this is the way that you can really help children start to have critical thinking. Do I trust that just because it says that? I'd have to go and compare it to other tomatoes. I'd have to look at, what kind of peppers are on the shelves. And you talk to your children about, we can only know something's what it is because we've had experience of coming across it. We've had conversations. If I'm sitting in a cafe area, I might talk to them about what we're watching. Like, look at that mister with his doggy over there. Do you think that doggy's a good doggy? Okay, how do you know it's a good doggy? Look at the way that doggy over there with that mister isn't even going back to his owner. And you start to have conversations about the real world. And then what I do is I always bring it into something that's kind of age relevant. So for young children at the minute, Bluey, Peppa Pig. For my children many, many years ago, it was still Winnie the Pooh because that was quite popular, Pokemon, things like that. We would have conversations, but I would also take my phone calls with the speaker on, in terms of if it was a scam call, if it was, and it's become part of my children's narrative, right, that I challenge everything. And one particular phone call was, the bank had phoned me up and said, right, we just want to take you through a few security checks. Could you tell us your date of birth? And I said, how do I know you're the bank? And they said, because it's the bank calling you. And I said, but it's come up without a number. And this went back and forth for nearly 20 minutes. And the customer service rep said, well, if you can't prove who you are. I said, well, you can't prove who you are. He said, well, we're going to have to lock your account. I said, off you go then. And it turned out it was actually the bank, and they locked my account.
That's brilliant. Honestly, it's so brilliant. That goes into what I always tell parents in terms of what they hear you say out loud is what they internalize later. So what they hear you say about other people, about other situations, and about them out loud, it's going to become their internal voice. And so let's say that you want your kids to like know how to come to you if somebody is grooming them online. If you see a news story about a kid who was groomed online, or let's just say in United States, we had a couple of cases of kids who were kidnapped or from someone they met online. If your immediate reaction to the news story is, oh my God, like why are these kids playing with strangers or meeting them? Why would they ever meet somebody? So your kid is now internalizing that conversation. And so I believe doing that in the opposite, exactly what Dr. Kath said, where you're intentionally saying things out loud so that your kid has an internal voice, your internal voice, or your voice in their head that's positive, that allows them to feel confident coming to you or confident navigating situations that typically we would conceal. So typically you would not have your bank on a speakerphone, right? But you're modeling, because you had that on speakerphone, you're modeling for your kids what to do if someone were to say, hey, I am Roblox and I need your password because someone got into your account. They're going to think, oh, wait a minute. Like, I remember that conversation. How do I know it's actually Roblox? How do I know that this is Fortnite? How do I know that this is actually Instagram or TikTok, Snapchat wanting me to verify my identity? Because that's sometimes also how hackers get to kids. So I love that so much. You can do the same thing with news stories. You see a news story, some kid ran away and you're like, oh my God. Like, I know you meet so many great people online. They must have thought like, hey, I'm meeting a friend that's so upsetting that it turned out not to be a friend. I really hope that the family's able to, whatever, you have a positive reaction to that so that your kid goes, oh, wait a minute, because they might hear you in the other room. And it also helps you. So even if your kid is not around, it helps you get into the mindset of having your reaction out loud that is conducive to your child's safety, so that when you actually get into a situation where you have to react, your knee-jerk reaction is something that is actually helpful to your kids.
And to add on to that, Farida, there are times that we don't put things out loud. And I'm going to say that includes social media videos. Sadly, we do live in a time when parents play a video, it is overheard by a child. And what I'm going to say is, I'm going to take your phrase there, mainly because I've already recorded the video and it's going out. Your children are in the room. And even if they're physically in your, I don't know, your living space, and you play a video, you play something that is talking about the children that ran away. And of course, there are always reactive videos online. There are always news reports. What does tend to happen is people might share it with oh my God, I can't believe they were so stupid.
Yes.
That child then hears that video and goes, oh, mum agrees with it because she's watching it. Dad said blah, 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 because he heard this on a video. So it's always bearing in mind what we watch on video on demand, what we watch on our devices, what we play out loud is also being broadcast to the children. And that is a direct finding from my PhD. Children weren't necessarily traumatized by some of what they were doing. It was what their parents were playing, listening to, showing, etc., etc. And I call that by proxy viewing, or by proxy impacts, really.
Okay, so how can we empower kids? Because right now, I think the parents probably trying to address this. They're going to be scaring the kids, not empowering them to feel that they have the capability of making good decisions, doing the right thing. How can we, teach our kids to be digital citizens and not just rule followers, and stay safe?
By being good digital citizens ourselves. That would be a starting point, wouldn't it? If we all behaved sensibly, nicely, compassionately, I would certainly say, Angela, in terms of, and I think Farida and I share a lot of very similar opinions on this, helping parents understand the real world can be scary and so can the online world. And generally, we're saying to children things that help them understand critical thinking. So not pejorative thinking, but critical thinking, having that air of, how do I know this person is who they say they are? And yes, engaging conversations with an element of wariness, cautiousness, and conversations that you're generally having with your child. So there are programs and products that will look at, and I use these when my children were on the internet very, very early on, because I come from tech. I actually put things on. And what I noticed is in some of the games, and this is going all the way back to Habbo Hotel, which I'm sure Farida will have possibly engaged with that game, people were using acronyms. So I used to say, well, what does that mean? And sometimes when I'm working with the children in therapy, I still pretend I don't know what things mean, because sometimes allowing the child to educate you can be the way that you learn. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily a, what are you doing? It's, oh, I don't understand that. What's happening there? And this is exactly what I do with children in therapy. So I use these games. I use Roblox. I use Fortnite. And we talk about the language people use, the avatars that they're representing themselves with. Is the male avatar a male person playing as a male avatar? Or is it somebody dressing up as a male avatar that could be in that game to make you think it's a male avatar? And we have those kinds of discussions. General chit-chat whilst watching and engaging in the game, because what I'm helping the child understand in the therapy office is I'm helping them navigate the world, but soon enough, and parents are not always keen on this, I will bring them in and I will say, sit here, watch the game, watch how we have a conversation. I now want you to go and emulate that in the real world.
Yeah, definitely.
Curiosity,
helping them
what the child is doing.
Right. Well, this has just been just so much. And we did not get through everything. So you're going to have to come back, because we, like I said, we need to inform, we need to help parents and be informed, and just maybe changing our language, our behavior, and a whole lot of other things too. So I have learned a lot. Thank you so much for being here. We are going to do this again and keep the conversation going. And so I just want to say, for those that tuned in, thank you for joining us at A Sharp Outlook. And we're here every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time. And we're here to help you to be informed and have knowledge and tools to be able to be your best self and live your best life. So join us again. Thank you. And as always, stay informed. I want to thank you for joining us on A Sharp Outlook. We have been informed and energized to take the next steps. We have posted links to websites and videos to learn more on today's topic. Please join us again next week for another thought-provoking conversation right here on K4 HD Radio and Talk 4 TV. Listen to the podcast on all the podcast apps. And until next week, stay informed.